Shalom, everybody, and welcome to the Hebrew Woman Show. I am your host, Renaissance Woman, aka Ren Judah, and the Hebrew Woman, right? So we're going to pick up where we've been going right along, steady on our journey, reviewing the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, and as always, we will go through our slideshow and talk about the core values that drive this channel. This is a channel for women, by women, so that we can have a place to come together and fellowship and just talk about Torah and how it is basically our navigating manual for life. It is our handbook. It's our survival scroll, as Reverend Nick said. Listen, this channel for me, kind of my love letter to the Most High and to myself. You know, what are the things that I would have liked to know, a younger version of me, or just even some topics, things that I just didn't think about, maybe just even last year, right? Because I believe that the growth process should be ongoing. It should be continual. I'm always looking to grow. And so one of the things that I am discovering with reading these books is that, there should be a compound effect. And so that's why, I was saying that we would read or listen to the book, and I encourage people to buy them. And I think what I'm going to do is kind of switch gears on you guys. We may go ahead and finish the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership here, but I think I'm going to switch to actually having the meeting for the book on Clubhouse, and I'll have the replays on, so that way if initially you don't come in, I'll just go ahead and go over the chapter, because I feel like there should be a discussion had about the actual laws and how they impact your life. And I can say for myself that I see them showing up all the time. And, it is raising my awareness about how I move, what I do, and how others, you know, see me. Well, when I'm engaging, am I showing up how I want to, So I'm thinking about all of that. The purpose of this channel is for us to examine ourselves. 2 Corinthians 13:5 says, examine yourselves whether ye be in the faith. Prove your own selves. Know ye not your own selves how Christ is in you, except you be reprobates. And so that is one of the key focuses here. Titus 2:1 is the second focus here. So not only are we examining ourselves, but we look at these qualities that are brought up here, so we know that we want to embody these characteristics. We want these characteristics to be how we show up. We want to be sober. We want to be grave, temperate, sound in faith and charity and patience. And when we talk about being sober, and that is a seriousness that we should have about life, our actions, what we're doing. We're alert, we're watchful, we're ready. And when it says that the women are to teach, the older women are to teach the younger women, that means you have to show up sober, watchful, ready. Because how can you give guidance and wisdom if you're not paying attention, if you're not alert, and if you're not exemplifying and embodying these types of behaviors? And one thing that I never did like was for people, holy rollers. I never wanted to be that person. And I don't think that it is, because I think it really gives people a false impression of what it means to serve the Most High. We serve the Most High in everything we do. And the things that we do here on this earth, the fleshly things that we do and think, and the way we be, because we're not being. A lot of times we spend a lot of time avoiding the being part of being human. So what is that like? What does that look like? How am I showing up? And am I allowing myself to have the whole full human experience of embodying emotions? And I can say that I'm a person who, especially when they're not positive feelings, I'm a person who will use avoidance tools, whether it's scrolling online, eating, talking on Clubhouse, anything rather than to take the time to put in the work, because and to not only put in the work to deal with myself, because the most important relationship you're going to have is that with the Most High. and with yourself. And what does spending time to cultivate those relationships look like? We talk about training ourselves to think biblically and not emotionally. What does that mean? That means not that we're emotionalists, that just we ensure that the things that we do are scripturally driven, that the principles that we embody are spiritually based, okay? That we're keeping the law and how that looks too. Also, Proverbs 11:14. Where no counsel is, the people fall, but in a multitude of counselors, there is safety. Meaning, are we surrounding ourselves with people who are living the type of lifestyle that we want to live, that are keeping God's commandments, following his laws and statutes? Because we support one another, we lift one another up in this chief aim, towards this chief goal, and that is to serve the true and living God. Okay? And you really want to work on building your board of directors. And that means, and not just surrounding yourself with people who are wise and who will give you the truth and wise counsel, but also that even when it comes to things that you're reading and watching, you're making sure that there are things that are edifying to you. Because Proverbs 19:20 says that we're to hear counsel and receive instruction, that we may be wise in our latter end. So if all we're listening to and entertaining is foolishness, that doesn't put us towards that aim either. And you always need positive feedback. You need honest feedback. Proverbs 28:26 says, he that trusteth in his own heart is a fool, but whoso walketh wisely, he shall be delivered. So there you go. You can't lean on your own understanding. And that doesn't mean that you just believe anybody that comes and tells you anything, because First John 4:1 says, beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits, whether they are of God, because many false prophets are gone out into the world. So when we say try the spirit, like Christ said, you look at the fruit that a tree bears. We look at men as trees, and what kind of fruit are the men and women in your life producing? And if the fruit is good, then we may want to consider taking some advice from them. But if it's not good fruit, then we may want you may want to just walk on past that. You want people who are going to sharpen you, make you sharp, make you brighter. Iron sharpens iron, says Proverbs 27:17. So a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend. You want people who are going to make you be better, make you want to be better. Even in your partner, whoever you're married, you want them to be somebody that makes you want to be a better person, a person that helps you create a vision for the life that you're building together. Because Proverbs 29:18 says, where there is no vision, the people perish, but he that keepeth the law is happy. So we're all chasing happiness, right? So that's just something you want to think about. If you're chasing happiness, the Bible tells us that the way to find that is through keeping the law. So we're on law number 6, the law of solid ground. Trust is the foundation of leadership, built through integrity, competence, and reliability. So let's just get right to it. I'm going to share my screen. My allergies are terrible today. I'm just having a terrible time with it. But well, I'm here all praises, so that's the most important thing. Is live to see another day, and I'm grateful for that. Here we are. Let's get to it.
Leadership law number 6, the law of solid ground. Trust is the foundation of leadership. How important is trust for a leader? Is it the most important thing? Trust is the foundation of leadership. It's the glue that holds people together on a team, in an organization, and even in a nation. Leaders cannot repeatedly break trust with people and continually influence them. It just doesn't happen. That's true in every area of society: government, education, business, religion, media, arts, sports, and healthcare. Broken trust undermines influence, and organizations fall apart. In my lifetime, I've observed the gradual breakdown of trust in our society, especially of its leaders. In the 50s and early 60s, People had confidence in political leaders and in their federal government. At that time, nearly 80% of Americans believed the federal government could be trusted to do the right thing most of the time. Today, only 24% of Americans trust the government. In a 2020 Gallup poll, people identified members of Congress as the least honest and ethical group by profession, with only 8% of people believing members of Congress demonstrated high or very high trustworthiness. When did trust in government leaders begin to erode? I believe it started in the mid and late 1960s during the Vietnam War. In 1961, during President John F. Kennedy's first year in office, when he said he wanted to fight and contain communism by supporting South Vietnam, most Americans supported him. Though he originally planned to provide only aid, that year he also sent 400 Green Beret commandos to Vietnam as advisors. The next year, he sent an additional 12,000 military advisors, as well as 300 helicopters and pilots. President Lyndon B. Johnson, who took office following Kennedy's assassination, escalated American involvement in the war. In 1965, he sent 150,000 troops, and by 1966, more than 200,000 Americans had been sent to Vietnam. Even with reports of casualties rising, 2/3 of all Americans, surveyed by the Lewis Harris poll, believed that Vietnam was the place where the United States should stand and fight communism. And most people expressed the belief that the United States should stay until the fight was finished. If you know anything about the 1960s, you know that the war in Vietnam divided the country. It sparked protests, inspired a huge anti-war movement, and brought about radical social change. How did the country move from overwhelming support to overwhelming opposition? The people lost trust in the nation's leaders. Johnson and his Secretary of Defense, Robert McNamara, weren't honest with the American people about the war. As early as 1962, McNamara told the public that they were winning the war. In his book, In Retrospect, McNamara recounted that he repeatedly minimized American losses and told only half-truths about the war. For example, he said, "Upon my return to Washington from Saigon on December 21, 1963, I was less than candid when I reported to the press. I said we observed the results of a very substantial increase in Viet Cong activity. True. But I then added, we reviewed the plans of the South Vietnamese and we have every reason to believe they will be successful." That would be an overstatement at best. For a while, nobody questioned McNamara's statements because there was no reason to mistrust the country's leaders. But in time, people recognized that his words and the facts weren't matching up. More and more young men were being drafted and sent to Vietnam, yet they were losing the war. The American public began to lose faith. Years later, McNamara admitted his failure. We of the Kennedy and Johnson administrations, who participated in the decisions on Vietnam, acted according to what we thought were the principles and traditions of this nation. We made our decisions in light of those values, yet we were wrong, terribly wrong. The era that had begun with hope and idealism characterized by John F. Kennedy ultimately ended with the mistrust and cynicism associated with Richard Nixon following Watergate and Nixon's resignation. Whenever a leader breaks the law of solid ground, he pays a price in his leadership, and the people who are asked to follow him suffer too. The repercussions of broken trust that started to rise in the 60s continue today, not only with political leaders, but with leaders in business, religious institutions, and the entertainment industry. Why? Because they have broken trust. I've become well known for teaching that everything rises and falls on leadership. I believe that to my very core. Everything rises when leaders demonstrate competence and good values, and everything falls when leaders demonstrate incompetence and poor values. Now, why do I say this? When leaders lack competence, they can't accomplish anything, and when leaders lack good values, they can't be trusted. They lack character. Without both competence and good values, they won't be able to get people to follow them. If vision is like the head in an organization and mission is like the heart, then values are like the soul. Who wants to be part of a soulless organization? Because trust can seem so intangible, perhaps it would help to think of it like coins in your pocket. Each time you make a good leadership decision through competence or good values, you earn more coins. And each time you make poor decisions, you pay out some of your coins to the people you're asking to follow you. All leaders have a certain number of coins or amount of change in their pocket when they start in a new leadership position. Whatever they do either builds up the number of coins or depletes it. If leaders make one bad decision after another, they keep paying out in coins. Then one day, after making one last bad decision, they suddenly and irreparably reach into the pocket and find there's nothing there. They've run out of coins. It doesn't even matter if the last blunder was big or small. At that point, it's too late. When you're out of coins, you're out as a leader. As Craig Weatherup, who retired as founding chairman and CEO of the Pepsi Bottling Group, acknowledged, people will tolerate honest mistakes, but if you violate their trust, you'll find it very difficult to ever regain their confidence. That is one reason that you need to treat trust as your most precious asset. You may fool your boss, but you can never fool your colleagues or your subordinates. Character and competence always go hand in hand. Journalist and former president of the United States Business Industrial Council, Anthony Harrigan, said, "The role of character always has been the key factor in the rise and the fall of nations. And one can be sure that America is no exception to this rule of history. We won't survive as a country because we are smarter or more sophisticated, but because we are, we hope, stronger inwardly." In short, character is the only effective bulwark against internal and external forces that lead to a country's disintegration or collapse. Character and good values make trust possible, and trust makes leadership possible. That is the law of solid ground. Whenever you lead people, it's as if they consent to take a journey with you. The way that trip is going to turn out is predicted by your character. With good character, the longer the trip is, the better it seems. But if your character is flawed, the longer the trip is, the worse it gets. Why? Because no one enjoys spending time with someone that they don't trust. A person's character quickly communicates many things to others. Here are the important ones. Leaders without inner strength can't be counted on day after day because their ability to perform changes constantly. NBA great Jerry West commented, "You can't get too much done in life if you only work on the days when you feel good." If your people don't know what to expect from you as a leader, at some point, they won't look to you for leadership. When I think of leaders who epitomize consistency of character, the first person who comes to mind is Billy Graham. Regardless of your personal religious beliefs, people trusted him. Why? Because he modeled high character for more than half a century. He lived out his values every day. He never made a commitment unless he was going to keep it. And he went out of his way to personify integrity. British politician and writer John Morley observed, "No man can climb out beyond the limitations of his own character. Weak character is limiting." Who do you think has the greater potential to achieve great dreams and have a positive impact on others? Someone who is honest, disciplined, and hardworking, or someone who is deceitful, impulsive, and lazy? It sounds obvious when it's phrased that way, doesn't it? Poor character is like a time bomb ticking away. It's only a matter of time before it blows up a person's ability to perform and the capacity to lead. Why? Because people with weak character are not trustworthy, and trust is the foundation of leadership. Craig Weatherup explained, "You don't build trust by talking about it. You build it by achieving results, always with integrity and in a manner that shows real personal regard for the people with whom you work." When leaders have strong character, people trust them, and they trust in their ability to release their potential. That not only gives their followers hope for the future, but it also promotes a strong belief in themselves and their organization. Character communicates respect. When you don't have character within, you can't earn respect without. And respect is absolutely essential for lasting leadership. How do leaders earn respect? By making tough decisions, by admitting their mistakes, and by putting what's best for their followers and the organization ahead of their personal agendas. Respect is earned on difficult ground. Years ago, a movie was made about the 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment and its colonel, Robert Gould Shaw. The film was called Glory, and though some of its plot was fictionized, the Civil War story of Shaw's journey with his men and the respect he earned from them was real. The movie recounted the formation of this unit in the Union Army, which was the first to be composed of black soldiers. Shaw, a white officer, took command of the regiment, oversaw recruiting, selected the white officers, equipped the men, and trained them as soldiers. He drove them hard, knowing that their performance in battle will either vindicate or condemn the value of black people as soldiers and citizens in the minds of many white Northerners. In the process, the soldiers and Shaw earned one another's respect. A few months after their training was complete, the men of the 54th got the opportunity to prove themselves in the Union assault on Confederate Fort Wagner in South Carolina. Shaw's biographer, Russell Duncan, said of the attack, with the final admonition to prove yourselves men, Shaw positioned himself in front and ordered forward. Years later, one soldier remembered that the regiment fought hard because Shaw was in front, not behind. Almost half of the 600 men of the 54th who fought that day were wounded, captured, or killed. Though they fought valiantly, they were unable to take Fort Wagner. And Shaw, who had courageously led his men to the top of the fort's parapet in the first assault, was killed among his men. Shaw's actions on that final day solidified the respect his men already had for him. 2 weeks after the battle, Albanus Fisher, a sergeant in the 54th, said, "I still feel more eager for the struggle than I ever yet have, for I now wish to have revenge for our gallant colonel." J.R. Miller once observed, "The only thing that walks back from the tomb with the mourners and refuses to be buried is the character of a man." This is true. What a man is survives him. It can never be buried. Shaw's character, strong to the last, had communicated a level of respect to his men that lived beyond him. No leader can break trust with his people and expect to keep influencing them. Trust is the foundation of leadership. Violate the law of solid ground, and you diminish your influence as a leader. But honor the law and build trust, and people will follow you even through the toughest of situations. That is what Rick Hendrick has done in one of the toughest businesses. Hendrick grew up on a farm in Virginia, but his great love was vehicles. He worked on farm engines as well as the cars his father raced on drag strips. He was so captivated by cars and racing that with his father's help, he built a 1931 Chevy into a race car. When the older boys at high school bragged about their cars, he offered to meet them at the racetrack. They didn't show up on that designated day, but he raced anyway, against the professionals, and he won. He was 14 years old. 2 years later, he won a statewide engine troubleshooting contest. I think it was inevitable that he would gravitate to the car business. He started at a small used car lot, and by age 23, he was named the general manager. 3 years later, General Motors approached him about taking over a tiny, failing Chevy dealership in another town, promising that if he made that one work, they'd offer him a big dealership. So in 1976, he sold his assets, bought the failing franchise, moved, and started over. When he made the dealership successful, GM kept their promise. Those were the first steps toward what would become the Rick Hendrick Automotive Group, the collection of more than 130 dealerships that he now owns. Hendrick never lost his love for racing. He founded his own racing team, which in 1985 he named Hendrick Motorsports. His team has won 13 NASCAR titles and won more races than any other team in history. In 2017, he was inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. How has Rick Hendrick become so successful? Trust. He is known for doing deals with nothing but a handshake. His high competence and strong character create solid ground for him, particularly marked by his care for people. When he visits one of his stores, he always enters through the back door so that he can greet the technicians, the porters, the parts staff. He learns people's names. One of his mottos is people before profits. That philosophy of business got tested during the COVID-19 pandemic. In March 2020, as COVID-19 spread, most people in the car business quickly downsized staff. Hendrick said his peers let go 20% of their employees. He wasn't going to do that. He let his 11,000 employees know that he was not letting anyone go. He would pay them out of his own pocket, and they would figure out how to get through the trouble together. Hendrick said, "If I preach my people are my biggest asset, and I tell them that they're the most important part of our company, then when things happen, you've got to stand up and stand with them." Hendrick was prepared to carry his employees for many months, but as it turned out, things began to turn around after only 2. While others in his industry scrambled to rebuild their teams, Hendrick's dealerships were already running on 8 cylinders, and 2020 became the most profitable year in his company's history. It wasn't profit over people, said Hendrick. It was people over profits, and the profits came. No wonder his top 15 leaders have been with him an average of 25 years. They trust him deeply. How do the members of your team feel about you? Are you on solid ground with them? Do they trust your competence and character? Do they know that you have good values and practice them even in the toughest times? If so, your influence will keep increasing. If not, you may need to do some work. You cannot escape the law of solid ground because trust is the foundation of leadership. When I think of the laws of leadership, the law of solid ground, may I say, is solid. I think that our values are only tested during difficult times. I think during good times, even average times, we're not tested too much to back up the words that we say with the actions that we live out. And so therefore, it's possible for us to not be exactly the same person that we talk about. But when the adversity comes, when the pressure comes, hey, when COVID comes, very quickly you separate the players from the pretenders. And what I've discovered is this: the players, the people that are trustworthy, the people that embrace great values. It's that embracement of those things that are vitally important that really make up the difference. Mark Cole, the CEO of the John Maxwell Enterprise, and he's also part owner. When COVID-19 hit, Mark and I literally sat down and said, what are we going to do? We really made the same decision that Mr. Hendrick made at Hendrick Motorsports. We decided that we would do the right thing for the people, that we keep everybody on the payroll. In fact, I remember saying, Mark, if we don't make it, let's just say, give the worst case scenario. Let's say that we all go bankrupt. At least we can look at our people with integrity right in the eye and say to them, we really did our best. I think that is essential. Roy Disney, the brother of Walt Disney, said, it's pretty easy to make good decisions when you know what your values are. Well, that's what the law of solid ground is all about. It's based upon good values and what we have discovered in our nonprofit organization, Equip, and in the John Maxwell Leadership Foundation, as we do transformation in countries based on values around small groups. Here's what we have discovered. When people learn good values and when they live those good values out, they become more valuable. They become more valuable to themselves and they become more valuable to others. And that, my friend, is the law of solid ground.
So I have to say that this chapter made me think of a lot of things as far as the law of solid ground goes with trust, right? Because, we say we trust in the Lord, but do we really trust in his word? Because we'll be going through something and it's like we suddenly forget the promises. I know I do, because I think I'm going to fix it. I always want to instill my will. I want to carry out my will. And my husband and I were even talking about this one day. We're just about, what does wait on the Lord mean? And I think, if you're always going and you're never sitting still, because it's like, well, how do I know when it's the Lord talking, or if the time is right? You be still, you meditate. And my husband always say, you fast and pray. But I don't want to do any of those things. I want to go. I want to fix it because I think I can do it. I alone can solve this, right? On the Donald Trump side of the game, but I think that's just not reality. But I do know this, if I'm going to be perfectly honest, that I can think of many times that I have, those coins that he said is in the pocket. I've lost coins because I've said I was going to do things and didn't do it. I could just think about things at home that I said I was going to do that I haven't finished yet. A lot of us can think of things that our bosses have told us, or our employers, or whatever you want to call it, have told us they were going to do and they didn't do it. You started to slowly lose trust. And you start to lose trust in yourself because you're constantly telling yourself, I'm going to do it next week. I do that all the time. I'm going to eat right next week. And the constant disappointment, the trust, it's an internal thing too. So it's just like, am I keeping my word? And if I'm not keeping my word to myself, can anybody else really count on me and trust me to do it? So I think that the law of solid ground is important. And it definitely is something that I'm going to do the exercises in the workbook, going to journal about and meditate on this week. Like, am I trusting in the Lord? Am I keeping my word to myself, to my husband, to my team, and my family? How am I showing up? And I was just thinking about how, especially with your kids, your parents tell you they're going to do something, and they don't show up or they don't do it. You don't forget those things. So you think about that. Just like you don't forget things that your parents may have told you they were going to do, it's the same way with your kids. Just like with your employer, if they tell you they're going to give you a raise or they're going to get some things, equipment for you guys, and they don't do it, you start to lose trust. You don't believe anything they say. And that is something, and David said that he's never seen the righteous forsaken. And that just tells me, and I can honestly say that I know when I've really gone through some stuff, and when we were down to the last quarter and I didn't think I was going to make it, and the Most High pulled me through. And that's something that I have to think about. Like, where is my trust? I know He's going to come through for me. So why am I so all over the place? Why am I allowing myself to be an emotional train wreck and spiral and do things that are not beneficial to me? So that's just something I thought I'd share, because my whole purpose here is to just be transparent when talking about the growth process, talking about spiritual growth. And the whole purpose too for me, like, the more I go through these steps, the more I listen, the more I read, I'm really realizing that I really need to shore up my relationship with the Most High. So hopefully that you all are listening and you're getting things from these laws. And until then, I'll see you next week. And as a matter of fact, you'll see me earlier than you think too. Shalom, Shabbat shalom, and I hope you had a wonderful, restful Sabbath.